My pleasure.
I bet.
There, it looks like we're almost all here. Just waiting on one.
We're almost all at 4:30. Now we
Yep.
are.
Almost all here.
We're missing the mayor or vice.
Yes.
Uh-huh. Good looking dog there, Jeff. Not. The dog's a killer.
He's waiting for public comment.
He's a beauty.
Okay, I just spoke with the vice mayor. He just asked to give him just a quick minute. He'll be joining in a second.
All righty, no problem.
While we're waiting, I just want to remind those people who have joined the meeting via computer, your controls for participating are located along the bottom of your Zoom screen. To mute and unmute yourself, you'll click on the microphone icon at the bottom left. To turn your camera on and off, click on the camera icon, also located on the bottom left of your screen. When it's time for public comments, if you'd like to speak, please raise your hand by clicking on the reactions icon at the bottom middle part of your screen, which looks like a smiley face, and then click on raise hand. If you've joined the meeting by phone only, you can still raise your hand by pressing *9. *6 will unmute and mute yourself when you're joining by phone. During public comment, you will be called on to speak in the order in which your hand was raised. Please wait to be called on before speaking. And to reduce distractions, please keep your audio muted and your video turned off when you are not speaking during public comment. Thanks.
And that noted, it is, well, a slight moment or two past 4:30 on May 18th, 2021. We are the Carmel-by-the-Sea City Council. I believe Bobby Richards has arrived. So could we get a quorum check, please?
Sure. Councilmember Barron?
Here.
Ferlito?
Here.
Heiss?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Richards?
Here.
Mayor Potter?
Yeah.
All right, we have a quorum.
We can conduct tonight's business. So the first order of business then is public appearances. This is an opportunity for any member of the public to speak on an item that is not on tonight's agenda. There's a 3-minute limitation on that testimony, and if you would state your name for the record, I would appreciate it. So anybody in the public wishing to speak tonight?
Hey, Beth Bowman, looks like your hand was up first.
Okay, thank you. Beth Bowman, Managing Director of Sunset Cultural Center. Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council members, and city staff. It has been almost 20 years since the Sunset Center's major renovation, and we're finding a considerable amount of equipment in need of repair or replacement. On April 21st, Sunset Cultural Center presented a matching funds proposal to the city for the Sunset Theater Upgrade Project. The scope of the project includes building and theater upgrades. There is no other span of time in the theater's schedule that accommodates this work once the theater reopens. Our goal is to complete this project while the theater is closed in preparation for the fall opening. We are moving forward with the approval of our board of directors all historic presenting partners, and 3 early-stage funders. Being sensitive to the financial demands on the city, I want to assure you that we are carving out a significant portion of our annual contract for this project. We will continue to pursue donations and grants from community members and theater enthusiasts who are inclined to fund items uniquely related to performance. Our request to you now is to replace the existing incandescent auditorium house lights with LED fixtures. This $110,000 investment is environmentally responsible, increases the lifespan of the building, reduces energy use, and provides cost savings over time. As a physical part of the building, it qualifies as a capital expenditure in our agreement. However, we hope funds outside of the CIP can be identified for this purpose. The potential for light fixtures to make it into the CIP budget is precluded by larger failing items like the fire pump. Sunset took a voluntary reduction in its contract this year to help the city when it looked like there would be a catastrophic reduction in city revenues. The reduction caused us to lay off most of our staff. Now that it's clear the city will have a surplus, contributing $110,000 to a capital improvement is an appropriate response. It is less than the city would have paid had it met its contractual obligation. This project can succeed with a public-private partnership, replicating the model that funded the renovation 20 years ago. The city's participation will be leveraged to attract more funders. We are committed to applying our resources to improve the city's largest asset, enhance the experience of theater users and audience members while making a positive impact on the local economy. I'll close with an invitation to discuss the details of this project with volunteer project manager, Carmel-by-the-Sea resident and nationally renowned theater professional, Ken Smith. I thank you for your time and ongoing support.
Beth, that would have been better served as we'd gone to public comment after the budget presentation. So if there's others tonight that wish to speak to additional augmentations, I'd suggest that we wait until after the budget's been presented. But Beth, you'd gotten a little bit into your presentation, so I didn't want to cut you off. But
thank you.
Right. The next person will be chastised accordingly.
Okay.
All right. Is there anybody else wishing to speak tonight?
Michael Raffetto,
Yes, please.
go ahead.
Thank you. Mayor Potter, council members, good afternoon. Thank you for giving me the time last week at your strategic planning session to address you. You should have received my email and attached correspondence earlier today. Earlier today, I received a reply to my most recent email from last Thursday, wherein I asked again that work be stopped on this project until Planning Commission acts. This is clearly what the language of condition of approval number 8 requires. Unfortunately, I was told today, paraphrasing, we have not correctly enforced this condition in the past, so we choose not to begin enforcing it correctly now. Skip the paraphrasing. Here's the language of the email I received. Staff is still of the opinion that we are following the conditions of the project as has been applied historically by stopping all work on the part of the project that was started without a permit. So having just heard that, let me read you some language out of condition number 8, condition of approval. Submit the change in writing and cease all work on the project until either the Planning Commission or staff has approved the change. I think that's pretty clear. Residents rely on the city council and the managers you employ to protect us. We trust the city's planning, review, approval, and permitting process to protect us. As residents, we believe the conditions of approval are a protection that projects will be built as approved, certainly when it comes to issues of privacy. Residents deserve better. We deserve better. Your staff is incorrectly administering this important condition of approval. I'm surprised that we tore the Band-Aid off of this problem, but it's not our problem, it's your problem. We don't have the luxury of multiple passes down this path allowing each iteration to see a little improvement in the way these are handled. This is our only experience with the system. You would not want us to score our experience. You would not want to ask us, are you being served? The only winner here is the contractor, Soroyan, who continues to work through the violations of the approved plans and permitting process without consequences. Thank you. Thank you for your time again.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate the testimony. Is there anybody else wishing to speak tonight?
Don't see anyone else with their hand raised. Again, *9 will raise your hand if you are attending via phone.
I'm not seeing anybody.
All right, I think we're good.
All right, that noted, I'll close the public comment period, bring us back to orders of business. We received a presentation on the 21-22 budget and possible direction from council. Chip, would you like to tee this up and then we'll hand it off to Sharon?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you so much. Thank you, council. Thank you, staff, for putting this together. We're very pleased to enter this workshop a little bit differently than we did, obviously, 12 months ago. We don't have a very clear crystal ball, and that's again, I think that's why we're conservative in some of the assumptions that we've made in the budget before you. But it's a lot more clear than it was last year at this time. The punchline is that we are beginning a recovery from the pandemic. We have focused this budget on being financially and fiscally and service oriented in a delivery mode, getting back to the high level of customer service that we've experienced and provided in the past. It's a budget that's based on innovation, efficiency, and again, customer service. I think the best way of characterizing this budget is that it is optimistic yet cautious. Of the three pillars that we base our revenue on, we've had, again, very strong property taxes and returns this year, and we're expecting them to grow next year. Then are the other two pillars of our revenue, which is our transit occupancy tax, our hotel tax, and our sales tax, are largely visitor driven. So again, no surprise here, just a small reminder that 2/3 of our budget does come from visitor trade and traffic. As the vaccine for COVID continues to be rolled out and more people are being vaccinated, I think we're seeing more people who are comfortable with travel. We certainly expect them to come here to our village and be respectful and be mindful of the sustainable nature of our village, trying to love Carmel like a local. That said, again, we are producing a relatively conservative budget here. So I'm going to pepper Sharon's conversation as we usually kind of tag team it, and I'll add some things in. I've got one significant noted change when we get to the community planning and building department. We have received, I think we received about a dozen questions that we have answered in the packet. This is the forum for individuals to ask more questions. If we can answer them on the fly, we certainly will. I'll try to do math in public. We did receive a letter from Miss Long, Irene Long, up at 4th and Mission today, Unit B. So we'll be prepared to answer that to her in writing. We've already have a draft answer. And the last thing is, we did send you a copy of some of our financial policies at the request of a council member for Lido today. And again, we're happy to talk about our reserve policy or any of the other policies that we have contained in that document. And I think with that, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to conclude and take it away, Sharon, please.
Sharon, it's all yours.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Again, we're here to take a more detailed look of the recommended fiscal year 21-22 budget to really go over some of our revenue estimates, our projected expenses related to the general fund or the operating budget, capital, debt, and workers' compensation. To discuss our projected fund balance, which is how we anticipate that will end both this fiscal year and the fiscal year that will end on June 30th of 2022. We would welcome questions from council and the public and look forward to direction from council on any changes to the operating budget. We are looking for guidance related to pension mitigation and any discussion on fund balance and reserve threshold. Again, our target date for adoption is June 8th as a special meeting. And again, depending on the cadence of questions and changes that we receive today, we can discuss that timeline as well. Again, as a recap, our budget is a little over $25 million, with the majority of the budget, $22 million, being housed in what we call our general fund, which again is our operating budget. That's our city departments, our city staff, a lot of the city functions, a little over the $2 million mark for capital projects, and close to $1 million for debt and worker compensation combined. And we are anticipating a little bit over 80 full-time equivalent positions, and we'll speak to that in a moment. As council may recall from our May meeting, our revenue, as the city administrator has spoke to, really is comprised of our property tax, representing about 30% of our proposed budget, our sales tax, which includes the 1% we receive through the state, and our local 1.5% of Measure C combined are about 27%. And again, our transient occupancy tax, we're starting to build in that recovery and have budgeted at 21% of our overall revenue sources. Again, we're cautious and optimistic that our revenues, particularly sales tax and TOT, will start to rebound in the upcoming year, but we do anticipate that it will take several years to really return to the fiscal year 18-19 pre-pandemic levels. We spoke just briefly about charges for services at last meeting. Again, the bulk of the charges for services is driven by charges for building services, plan check, inspections, and planning services. Together, that's over nearly $1.2 million of the charges for services. The third is ambulance, and that's anticipated revenue for transport, about $616,000. You can see that the other various items really are incremental compared to those larger three revenue sources. Some fees for administrative services, such as issuing business license, public works for tree removal, code enforcement, and community activities for your various special events. This time, I also wanted to break out what we call our other revenue. It is a fair amount, nearly $3.6 million of the budget. The largest category is what we call revenue from other governmental agencies or intergovernmental revenues. Again, the majority of that is what we consider motor vehicle in lieu. That's funds we get from the state in lieu of property tax. We are anticipating close to $400,000 for the second phase of the American Rescue Plan Act that was passed this year, and we do have close to $300,000 in revenue from the state for affordable housing grants that will be administered by the planning department. So a little higher this year than prior years. We also have our typical taxes from business license, our franchise fees, some very specialized revenue, the COPS federal grant, which is for police staffing, some one-time grants for capital improvement projects for the radio antenna and for the state parks grant, and then our specialized transportation revenue from gas tax and from the local sales tax measure X as well. So just to give you a flavor of those different components that are rolled up into our other revenue. As we move to the other side of expenditures, as we noted in our May presentation, the majority of our expenses are for staffing and salary and benefits. You can see there about 43% of the total citywide budget. If we look at it compared to the operating budget of 22 million, it's closer to 50%, followed by your pension expenses are about 11% of the budget. Again, that includes the 1.8 million required payment for the unfunded pension liability to CalPERS, as well as $1 million that we've set aside this fiscal year for pension mitigation. And you can see the return of your capital budget, that's about 9%. Debt remains at about 4%. Other expenditures at 9%, and outside services, again, mostly housed in your general fund, or for those services that are not provided directly by staff, such as your fire service, some of your tree-related services, janitorial, other specialized consultants. So as the city administrator started the presentation, we are starting to rebuild our foundation and starting to recover from an operational perspective, as well as our revenues are anticipated to increase. You can see here in our full-time equivalent funding by fiscal year, we are proposing initially to be at 80.21, which again starts getting us back up. You can see in 11-12, we were at 74, and then we're able to start ramping up service levels, stay fairly flat, and then with the loss of our tax bases because of COVID-19 fall back down. You see on the right of the slide, the positions that we've included, a shared admin coordinator, which will be shared between administration, police, and public works, increasing really our core support services, additional part-time help for IT, which in light of so many virtual meetings and other IT needs is something that we feel is a worthwhile position to have in 21-22, increasing our finance specialist hours to really strengthen our payroll capacity, our internal controls, staffing for the library to begin that phased reopening of city facilities, the maintenance worker and project manager, and public works, the police officer position, and a new request for a 0.5 associate planner as well.
And Sharon, if this is a good point to talk about this, council, you know, I think we had a great strategic planning meeting last week, and in the intervening week, we really looked at the additional workload items that we had put on our plate, and just to name a couple of them, again in no particular order. You know, we're dealing with outdoor dining. We've got the forest management plan. We have our work with our commercial properties. We looked at an opportunity, economic opportunities function, Flanders Mansion, 6th Avenue, are looking at our social infrastructure, paid parking, the North Lot, climate action, our adaptation, affordable housing. We got those grants from the state, our telecommunications ordinance, our sign ordinance, and not the least of which is our commercial and residential code amendment and design guidelines. So Bob Harari, our Public Works Director, and Brandon Swanson, Community Planning and Building Director, and I talked to Sharon, and what we're proposing here is a 0.5 associate planner that would that would work on these kind of advanced planning topics. And again, let us manage the specific projects, obviously, but that gives you a sense for the added workload. You know, the last slide from last week, we talked about economics and capacity. I don't want to break any staff members. So again, we're slowly rebuilding our services through funding additional FTEs. And I think that this would be a real value added position for the next year to ensure that we're able to get some of these advanced planning like topics completed. If I remember correctly, when I arrived at the village the first time in the mid-90s, I believe we had 105 employees. And if we could go back a couple more years, that was 2006, I believe. You know, that line graph that Sharon has provided there, it has gone up and down, and it's based on our workload. It's based on straight economics on our revenue and what the council wants to do. So again, I'm happy to defend this position at your leisure. Again, we could talk about it a little bit more. And again, Bob and Brandon and I are talking about, you know, where to house that position. But again, I really do see it as a journey level planner. So a planner that has probably an advanced degree and has some years under their belt to help us with some of these planning efforts. So thank you, Sharon, for that extra time.
So the previous slide illustrated that the majority of the operating budget is allocated to staffing costs for salary and benefits. And then we just looked at a little bit of the staffing increase for the upcoming year. And so we also wanted to provide that staffing breakout by function. And you can see that it's no surprise a lot of the field positions make up the larger part of our staffing budget. The police department makes up 29% of your staffing with just a little bit over 23 FTEs, followed by your public works department as well. And you can see the breakout there by department. And again, as we talk about our major drivers of cost, salary and benefits being the leading cost factor. We look at the departments that have more staff, then again, the logical conclusion, as you can see here, is that those departments tend to make up a larger portion of your dollar bill. So again, your police department with a budget of 4.3 million makes up about 17% of the budget, followed by public works, again, with 12% of the budget, about 2.9 million. You can see on the dollar bill to the far left, citywide, which again houses those pension costs of about 2 million of the $4 million budget, makes citywide expenses about 16% of the budget. And you can see, again, the other departmental functions and how much of the budget that they contribute to. What I quickly like to do is walk through the departments at a glance, highlight some of the breakdown of some of the line item expenses and any changes for the year. You do have the full budget in the recommended budget books. So the first department is council. Again, largely driven by your regional JPAs, your dues. This is things such as your membership in TMZ and AMBAG. Your community promotions account includes the 20,000 for the discretionary grants that council took action on in early May, as well as a projected budget of 81,000 for the mail service program. We've also included budget for conference and meetings. We've increased the budget in the upcoming year compared to prior years, assuming that there'll probably be a little bit of a blend between virtual meetings and eventual in-person meetings for things such as the League of California Cities and other conferences that the council would like to attend. On the bottom part of the screen is the city attorney budget. The city attorney did take a voluntary reduction this year in the budget for the general legal services that is expected to increase in the upcoming fiscal year, as well as additional funds for specialized services such as telecommunication, personnel, labor, just augmentation over the general legal services that we do receive. The administration department, Office of the City Administrator, includes administration, it includes finance, the city clerk, HR, and IT. As mentioned on the prior slide related to staffing, we're looking at 1.23 full-time equivalent increase. Again, the increase in the part-time help for finance and IT, as well as that shared administrative coordinator position, which would allow additional staff here at City Hall for customer service, for counter support. Really, a theme for the departments is really business necessity. I think what we'd really like to the council and the public to be cognizant of is that the departments work very hard to produce a pragmatic budget. A lot of our costs are outside of our control. They're mandated services by the federal or state government, or just the cost that it takes to provide services. So there's not a lot of programs and other discretionary spending. So you see here, the administration or contract services is the costs for public meetings, the agenda management, our website, video streaming, legal noticing, required financial audits and reporting, recruitment and hiring. Administration does house several citywide expenses as well that are largely managed by our IT manager. That includes our telecommunication, our required software license for our Microsoft and other products, our finance system, costs for employee assistance programs, as well as returning the budget for employee appreciation efforts, and training and postage. And we are proposing to continue the development of our retention schedule project led by our city clerk, which is being started this fiscal year with some savings that we have in the operating budget. The non-departmental or citywide is, again, the cost related to doing business. It includes our insurance premiums for property, for general liability, any claim deductible. It includes our utilities, the sewer and water assessments. That's housed in the property tax assessment account. It includes our pension and retiree healthcare cost, and the cost by the county for administering our property tax. Toward the end of the presentation, and when we group on discussion with council, we currently have set aside $1 million for the pension mitigation option. This right now is housed in our operating budget. We would seek a direction and recommend that that funding be transferred either to the OPEB reserve fund or to a special pension fund rather than stay within the operating budget. But again, for transparency and until we get more to the mechanics of the budget, we did want to include it right there in non-departmental so that council and the public are aware of our desire to put funding aside for pension mitigation strategies. Your marketing budget includes $750,000 for the Sunset Cultural Center operating grant. We have included close to $8,000 for a placeholder for forest management, the Forest Theater management and oversight, pending the RFP process that is underway right now. We have included funding for MCCVB, the Monterey County and Convention and Visitors Bureau. That's $160,000 is based on 3% of our fiscal year 21-22 TOT budget of $5.3 million. Visit Carmel, we were recommending an increase of 5% over the current year, which brings their funding to close to 101,000, and to retain the support to the chamber at 15,000 as well. Library, the city through its memorandum of understanding with the library funds the staff. The other parts of the library, such as the books and materials and supplies, are funded by the library partner agencies. We are recommending funding for the equivalent 3 FTE for a phased reopening of the city libraries. Community activities includes funding for the contract services to support city events, such as sound and tree lighting. This budget has really been reduced from the prior years in light of COVID restrictions, but really the department and the commission have come up with several innovative ideas to engage the public, and so we do have funding set aside to continue efforts for city events in whatever shape or form they should take moving forward, other initiatives, and support for permitting and other logistics at the farmers market. Planning and building does include the 0.5 FTE of the associate planner that the city administrator spoke to would be added to the budget based on council direction. Our contract services account is fairly large in the department in the upcoming year. Again, nearly 300,000 for the affordable housing studies, which again are offset by state grants, 15,000 for assistance with the design guidelines. We did anticipate that there's a lot of fluidity in the department right now with recruitments for building official transitions with planners. And so we did put in funding for as needed contract services, which again could be used to offset the cost of an associate planner, and finance would make that adjustment on the line item accounts. And then
let me really briefly speak to that one, if I may, Sharon. We have, again, $38,000. We could use that to augment code compliance, although we're still hoping to glean a fee from the users of our parking spaces for the outdoor seating. We did have a planner who recently left us, Catherine Tyrone, who left last week. And we do have some other staff members who will be going on leave, family leave. And we also promoted, congratulations to Jermel Laurie, I wrote you that last week, Council, promoted him to building official. So we do have a vacant building inspector position again. So those are the funds that we can use to augment what is a little bit of a truncated staff right now, just to these interim changes. So thank you, Sharon.
Thank you for clarifying. And then other contract services, again, the business necessity costs, copiers, the permit system, noticing short-term rental compliance software. And again, a department that is driven by certifications, requirements by the state for our building staff, as well as a real desire to have our planning staff credentialed and involved in professional associations. You see the training and membership budget at 14,000 as well. Public Works, we are recommending an increase of 2.25 FTE. Again, as you look through the department budget, you really see the cost that's needed to provide service to the village, safety equipment and supplies, gas and oil, vehicle maintenance, particularly as our vehicles age, the maintenance costs correspondingly increase. Permits for our uh, storage tanks and things of that nature. So, and of course, materials and supplies, asphalt, trees, lumber, things needed to take care of the village. The contract services, we try to highlight some of the major components. That includes janitorial service. We have included a supplement of $45,000 for additional facility maintenance needs, as well as funding for the various facility repairs, inspections, testing. These are the costs of your electricians, your plumbers, your inspecting fire sprinkler systems. Environmental compliance, and particularly our regulatory compliance with stormwater is the bulk of contract services as well. You can see the cost for required water sampling, $32,000, the cost to keep our storm drains clean, which again helps prevent the flooding of our streets, and for the runoff entering the ocean, nearly $30,000. Our dues for working regionally on stormwater compliance, $22,000. Required restaurant inspections, $10,000. We have included funding to start the update on the stormwater ordinance. This, in addition to our stormwater regulatory compliance, we have several diversion requirements from Cal Recycle in the state to reduce our trash to recycle more to now recycle organics. And so we do have funding set aside for contractual help, and of course $10,000 for our Mission Trail of Nature preserve fuel reduction, which will be used for a grant that we recently learned that we were awarded and will be coming to council for approval. And then in our forest parks and beach division, $105,000 for tree-related service, funding for debris removal, the forest management plan, on-call and landscaping, which is really more for sort of those weed whacking and rural fuel reduction efforts, and a little funding set aside for on-call arborists in our tree inventory software. Similar ambulance, the cost to provide the ambulance service is pretty straightforward. It's the 6 staff members. It's the required training, again, to keep up the credentials. The cost for contract services, that includes coverage with the city of Monterey. If the city itself and our employees are not able to staff the station, we do have a relationship with the city of Monterey to make sure that we have station coverage. The required contract with a third party to do the transport billing, costs for administration and regulatory oversight, costs to make sure that the ambulance is connected to all the required reporting software, and safety equipment, medical supplies for the ambulance fuel vehicle maintenance. So again, the services and the costs that you would tend to envision when you think about the ambulance. Fire largely includes the cost of fire service with the city of Monterey at $2.7 million. Also required cost of dispatch, $30,000, and we have included funding for the wildfire risk assessment. And again, typical with the operational departments, funding for fuel, vehicle maintenance, safety equipment as well. Police department recommended increase of 1.25 FTE, bringing the FTE count to 23.25. Again, a lot of the costs related to the police department are things largely outside our control, and things required to provide safety to the village. And you can see on the slide some of the more expensive elements of contract service, the automated criminal justice system. As we bring on initiatives such as installing the security cameras or equipping our patrol vehicles with license plate recognition, there is the corresponding maintenance and technology costs that also need to be added into the operating budget, costs of body cameras, and again, the related software cost for the county jail. And we have included funding to augment the police department efforts with beach patrol and other special events. And again, fuel and vehicle maintenance are large drivers, as well as required training for the police staff and safety equipment. Capital projects, there's a comprehensive list of the projects within the recommended budget book, both a combination of the purchase of the various public safety vehicles and equipment, which is housed in our vehicle and equipment fund, as well as our proposed capital projects for the paving and sidewalk, wayfinding signs, Sunset Center windows, ADA improvements, the library master plan, drainage, and those various projects at the beach, the scenic pathway barrier, the continued support for the dunes, funding for beach sand and wall inspections, and funding for our Mission Trail Nature Preserve for the tank removal, and the first phase of the streambed stability project, which again is offset by a state parks grant, lead the category. We also have included funding for our IT server and phase one of the property files and providing public access to those. That comes to a total of just a little bit over $2.3 million. Debt service is our service for 3 bonds. You can see to the left are engine radios. That bond does expire on June 30th, 2023. We have been working with the county for a new radio count, and we do have less radios, so we have a little bit of a lower debt service this year. As council is aware, we refunded the revenue lease bond at the Sunset Center, and that new refinancing matures on November 1st, 2032. We were able to take advantage of those low interest rates and help with cash flow, which is helping this fiscal year. And you can see for the upcoming year, just an interest-only payment. So that again will help with cash flow or help the city fund other services and projects. But we do anticipate that cost to return back to the 500,000 mark in the out years. So something to be cognizant of, short-term savings, but we'll have increased payments for the remainder life of that bond. And then our pension obligation bond, the city did issue pension obligation bonds in 2012 to address the city's pension needs at that time. We are on the tail end of making our payments, and that bond does mature on June 1st of 2023, which will free up close to $700,000 annually. Workers' compensation, again, we've really wanted to try to realign the expenses related to worker compensation, both the cost of administration, as well as some ergonomics and other preventive measures that used to be housed in human resources over to our workers' comp fund, as well as really establish a budget for potential claims paid and really be proactive in trying to make sure that there's funding for any potential claims. And so you do see in this budget funding in our workers' compensation fund compared to prior years. This slide, we started our presentation with a global look at our revenues. Then we looked at our expenses and the various components that we recommended spending money on. This slide is to help illustrate where those revenues are those revenues that are coming in, where they're going. So our general fund revenues, again, that's things such as our property tax, our Bradley Burn sales tax, charges for service, franchise fees. Those total just a little under 15 million in new revenue. Most of that revenue is staying in the general fund to pay for your city services. However, we are transferring about 1.3 million out, 300,000 to the capital improvement fund that will pay for your required maintenance of effort for the streets project, 15,000 to the CIP for sidewalks. That's actually revenue from TAMZ for the RSTIP. We are recommending paying our debt service with our general fund revenues, and again, the funding to address our workers' compensation needs, as we just reviewed a minute ago. Our transient occupancy tax will transfer out to our general fund to support citywide operations. Our local sales tax, Measure C, largely will support our general fund operations. Again, those citywide services. We do have funding recommended to support capital projects, funding for the vehicle and equipment fund for those public safety purchases. And we do recommend transferring almost $360,000 of Measure C revenue into the vehicle and equipment fund to address what we anticipate being a shortfall this fiscal year, as well as starting to build up that fund for our future vehicle needs. As council is aware from our 5-year forecast, we anticipate the street sweeper, fire engine, several vehicles needing to be replaced in the upcoming years. The COPS is again, specialized revenue from the federal government. It transfers to the general fund for the police department. We're recommending transferring out the budgeted revenue for fiscal year 21-22. Revenue did come in a little higher than expected in the prior year. And so we do have a little bit of fund balance. And so we are proposing to move that over as well to the general fund to support our police department. And then your gas tax and transportation safety fund, known as your Measure X, again, restricted revenues. We are proposing to use most of our fiscal year 21-22 anticipated revenue to fund the street and sidewalk projects. We do have accumulated fund balance from putting our streets projects on hold in the prior years, again, because of COVID-19. Those funds do have limitations on how quickly they need to be spent. So we are recommending bringing over some of that fund balance as well and starting to use those funds for projects in the upcoming fiscal year. Projected fund balance, and this chart's also in the budget book. Again, we expect when we close the books on June 30th of 2021, here in about a month and a half or so, that the general fund will stay relatively intact. You can see with Fund 102 Hallstreet, we have budgeted about $2.5 million in revenue for this fiscal year. We do anticipate that if May and June come in as projected, that revenue may be closer to $4 million. And so that delta between what we budgeted and the actual revenue that comes in would stay within the TOT fund. And that's your change in fund balance of $1.5 million. I believe we had a question earlier about how do we replace the fund? Well, basically the fund gets replenished if our revenues come in higher than anticipated. We had the reverse scenario in fiscal year 19-20 where our revenues came in less than we budgeted due to the impact of COVID-19 and needed to correspondingly use that TOT fund balance. Again, when all is said and done, we should finish the fiscal year on track and to the positive. And then jumping ahead to fiscal year 2022, projected fund balance, we did try to break out our general fund. So the 7.7 million does include your required reserve of 10%. You can see in the proposed fund balance for June 2022, that 2.3, that's 10% of your revenue and expenditure transfer out of 23,309,908. So that's where we came up with that to get you to your 7. And again, that 10% is codified in the municipal code. The TOT fund is a recommended guideline and policy established by City Council to set aside 10%. And then when I say set aside, that is your floor. That is the minimum that your reserve fund should have. So again, you see for June 2021, 248, that's 10% of, again, our projected budgeted revenue of TOT of nearly 2.5 million. You see here in 2022, 533 is 10% of our budgeted TOT. So again, if TOT should come in higher next fiscal year, the fund balance would grow, and conversely, if it comes in lower than that 5.3, we would use the fund balance. Moving through, again, our gas tax and transportation safety funds are restricted in nature, that they need to be used for transportation related projects. You can see, as I noted, our new revenues that we expect to get in the upcoming year, as well as tapping into that fund balance that is required to be used in 2 years. To go out to our streets project, we will have a little bit of funding left to use in the following fiscal year of 22-23 as well. And again, COPS restricted funds there. We anticipate using all of our fund balance and projected new revenue to support our police department. Again, restricted funds there. Our local sales tax measure, again, we expect there to be a fund balance on June 30th, 2021. Part of that is compounded. We do not need to transfer our local sales tax to the general fund to support our maintenance of effort for the streets project, because the streets project was on hold. So that stayed in the account, as well as anticipated sales tax revenue being higher than projected. You can see the 4.2 in and out is our anticipated new revenue for fiscal year 21-22. Capital projects, a little bit of fund balance for projects that were completed and finished under budget, as well as projects that were put on hold. Your debt service, your fund balance includes that savings from the refinance, but we do anticipate in the next year that we'll pay our debt service as budgeted and projected. You can see our workers' compensation fund is not looking positive this year, and hence why we are choosing to proactively address worker compensation and put the $116,000 in the budget. And our vehicle and equipment replacement fund, we anticipate will end the year negative, largely due to some public safety projects and other facility projects. We are anticipating the $785,000 to be spent in the upcoming fiscal year. That includes our local funds, as well as the federal grant for the radio. If we hold the line with how negative the fund goes this year, we should be able to set aside some funding to build that fund back up. And so you can see that in your projected fund balance. So again, across the board, by being able to use some of the restricted fund balance for its intended purpose, as well as really trying to match our revenue with our expenditures, you can see that overall we expect our fund balance to be relatively intact, a little bit of a surplus of 53,000, but again, that's across all the restricted funds. But more importantly, we do expect our general fund to stay intact based on the budget that we've put forward for council's consideration.
Sharon, if I can, this is a new slide, council, based on some questions that we've received regarding our obligatory fund reserve. So I think this is a good slide because again, it highlights our policy on general fund reserve as well as the hostile reserve. And again, what we've done in the past is we've a lot of the funds, as Sharon has referenced, are restricted to a specific purpose. And in the notes prior to these tables in the packet, you see what the funds have to be used for. This, to be clear, this table is not in the packet. This is a table that Sharon created this week, Sharon and Robin and others. But again, I think it provides some good guidance. About 3/4 of the way down, we talked about capital projects. Again, you know, we sometimes have overruns on capital projects. We have a $453,000 beginning balance right now. And again, if we do have projects that go slightly over, like the fire fuel pump, the fire pump at Sunset Center, again, we're able to tap into these funds up to my limit. That you've allowed to pay for those slight cost overruns. So anyway, it's a good table. We're happy to answer any questions. But if you flip back and forth, again, you see that we're projecting about a $2.5 million fund balance, ending year balance for this fiscal year. And then a good budgeting, of course, we use some of that money to pay for expenses in the next fiscal year. And Sharon's coming in at about $53,000 for next year. So that's some pretty good budgeting as well. Hopefully it works out. So thank you, Sharon.
Thank you, City Administrator. And would also like to draw council's attention to the Fund 502. That's our OPEB reserve. We've included information in your packet on the history of that fund being created by council to really address other post-employment benefits. Council has the discretion to modify the purpose of the OPEB reserve to also include addressing pension liability, or we could create a new fund, which probably would be 504 for pension mitigation, and move the $1 million that's currently in your general fund, your Fund 101, to either of those reserve accounts so that it's clearly distinguished from the operating budget. Which gets me to the last slide. Again, we're here, both the city administrator, finance staff, our department directors, to answer any questions you have about the proposed budget that we've put forth. We're looking forward to any direction regarding changes to expenditures, be it staffing, services, or projects, depending on the magnitude of the type of expenses and the increases to the budget. We can come up with different funding options. Again, if the expenses are fairly minimal, the possibility of increasing our revenue, there is a possibility to decrease our expenditures. I would like to say that I believe our operating budget is very lean. There's very few areas to really cut from the departmental. I also believe we put together a very robust and balanced capital improvement plan, but that is an opportunity to potentially remove a project or change the budget. There is, of course, the $1 million for pension mitigation. And as we spend a great deal of time on the fund balance, the use of the general fund balance. Again, related to pension, seeking confirmation on that $1 million set aside, as well as some preliminary direction related where to house the pension mitigation. and any discussion or questions council wishes to have about fund balance and reserves. We are looking forward to potential budget adoption on the 8th of June. With that, I'm available to answer any questions that council or the public may have.
Thank you, Sharon. As always, very well done. Much appreciated. Are there any questions of Sharon or Chip at this time before I open up for public comment? Bobby?
Thank you, Mayor. I have one question, I guess it's for Chip or Sharon, and then I have a question about process for you, Mayor, if that's okay.
Give it a go.
Okay, so as concerning the process, I'm just wondering, at the workshop, we talked about coming up with a council agreed upon savings amount. And I was hoping or wondering if we were going to do that before we go into the spending mode. And then, so that was my question for you, and it's for Chip and Sharon. You added a new position, a halftime person for halftime, and then you listed, several things that they would be responsible for: climate adaptation, parking, outdoor seating, housing, forest. This is a 20-hour person. How do you see their work week looking with so many things on task?
Well, I think it's if I may, Mayor.
Sure. No, I was just going to say, as far as your process question, Bobby, I would like to get that question out first when we go for decision making. What are we going to have as a reserve? Can we come up with a number that we agree on? Then can we decide if there's additional monies left over? How do we want to allocate those dollars, and what direction do we want to provide to staff at that time?
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Chip.
Yeah, and thank you, Councilmember Richards. It's a good question. I mean, it's really going to come down to strong management of these work program items. And again, whether they're existing work program items or some of the things that we discussed last week in our strategic planning, it's going to need to be very, very well managed. I am committed to starting with the 0.5. I won't be embarrassed if I need to come back to you in October or mid-year and say we need more capacity, because I am concerned about, and everything that you've done from the perspective of the capital work or these advanced planning topics, and I'm just using that as an umbrella description, council member, are good and important things that we should be doing, we need to do. Again, where we're going with this halftime position is we need to be cognizant of capacity. And again, I think this is a prudent addition. I think it's a conservative addition to the staffing at this point in time, Mr. Richards, and I'll keep you close. Through this pandemic year, we've been touching base with you every 2.5 to 3 months. If that's your direction for the new fiscal year, we're happy to do that. We really are, to tell you where we are with some of these things, because again, the workload did kind of blossom last week. Again, all good things on here, all good things to move the village forward. But they do take some capacity, sir. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Chip. Thank you, Mayor.
Karen?
Yes. I see that you broke out of the general fund reserve. So the general fund was 5,536,000 and some, and then the reserve was 2,173,000. That's almost half, isn't it, as the reserve?
No, ma'am. So what?
Explain.
Yes, ma'am. So the general fund reserve is 10% of our overall budget of our operating budget. So our operating budget is 25 million. So that's for this coming year. For last fiscal year, it was whatever it was, Sharon, 19.8 or something. So we use the 10% threshold, and then again, that number is going to go up and down, right? Because all budget years are not even. If we look at the last 5 fiscal years, we've grown from from probably 17 million to 25 million in the last 5 years. So what Sharon was saying in her explanation is, we're not going to, if the budget goes down, we're not going to clear out that excess. We're just going to keep it at whatever it was. So the 10% is a basement, is a low threshold for our obligation in the reserve funds for both the general fund and for hospitality, for hostelry.
So is that what is covered under the fund balance policy? I asked for that financial and budget policies. And on, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5th page, it looks like, it says general fund and hostelry fund reserve shall be maintained at no less than 10% of their annual projected revenues.
Absolutely, exactly, ma'am. That's exactly at a minimum. What was the word you used? What was the
At
verb?
no less than.
No less than, exactly. Yes,
That is the adopted policy right now. Is that correct?
yes, ma'am. And when we talked about that last week, I think upon questioning of me, you said, well, you first of all, you asked Sharon, what do other cities do? And we're in the low end. Most cities are at 15 to 20% of reserve. So I think, again, what Mr. Richards was asking is, when are we going to discuss increasing that percentage from 10% to something else? And again, last week we briefly talked about a kind of a stair-step methodology where maybe we go to 12 or 14% and we use 16 and over time we're able to get to whatever a number that we're all comfortable with, whether that's 18% or 20%. So we really have a substantial reserve amount for catastrophic events like a pandemic.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Jeff?
Thank you. So to just continue on Councilmember Ferlito's line of questioning, Chip, what is the 5,378,000 number in Fund 101? So what is that? So I know that the $2.33 million is our reserve. What is the $5.378 million number? What is that?
That's what we call fund balance. That's our working capital. So our burn rate for all our expenditures is a little bit less than $1 million per month. So that's our working capital. That's how we pay salaries and fuel and trees and all the things that go into the operation of the city on a daily basis.
So that's basically cash in an account with some bank or the state.
It's cash with obligations.
What's the composition of the dollar amount in Fund 102?
The composition, sir?
Yeah, is that also cash in some account somewhere?
That's cash. That's cash. And again, our TOT, as she had that flow chart, Sharon did, our TOT is transferred into the general fund for expenditure. The hostelry account does have a 10% reserve obligation, but yes, sir, everything beyond that is fund balance, is cash on hand.
And also the dollar amount in Fund 206?
Again, that would be, if we're looking at fiscal year ending 2022, that would be the balance and would be cash on hand contingent on all those budgeted revenues coming in. So again, the 206 is our sales tax. So that's, reflective of the sales tax coming in on a timely basis from the state and in the amounts that we budgeted, similar to the TOT. It's it's a projected fund balance. That's a combination of what we expect when we close the books this year, and then what we expect our revenue to be. And so if those revenues don't come in, it doesn't materialize to cash on hand. It doesn't materialize into true fund balance that's available for use.
So as of June 30th of 2021, you expect the local measure sales tax to contain $1,341,000 in some bank account or some state account somewhere?
Well, that's next year, sir.
Well, it's the same. It's the same at year end, year beginning and year end.
Yes, that's correct. That's our projected.
Okay,
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, so Chip, just going back to your associate planner question or request, you're sure that's a position you can fill quickly? I mean, it does seem it's taking a little while to get some of these other FTEs back in office. So is that something you think you can get quickly?
It's a good question, Mr. Mayor. I think it is a position that would be desirable for someone who is, again, a journey level professional who doesn't want to work full time. I will hit that one like the rest of the positions, like a bomb to fill it. And if we're unable to fill up a half-time position, I'll come back to you with some other solution sets. There's always the temptation to use a contract planning service. They're much more expensive, and there's sometimes not the same level of vesting even with a part-time employee versus a contract service. So we'll do our best, sir.
I'd ask the same question if we were inclined to look for an additional part-time code enforcement officer.
Yes, sir.
The pluses and minuses too, from the hiring standpoint, are one, it's easier to terminate a contract with than if it's a permanent employee. So just thoughts. Am I correct?
Yes, sir. Good thoughts. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay. Okay. No other questions by council members? See none, I'll then open it up to the public. So anybody in the public wishing to speak to this item tonight? If so, please state your name for the record. 3-minute limitation on that testimony. I do see maybe Irene Long on. I'm going to leave it up to Britt to be the gatekeeper on public appearance items.
Yeah, I did see Irene with her physical hand raised, so I'm going to go with Irene first and then followed by Beth Bowman. Go ahead, Irene.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to say I've sat in on a number of these budget reviews in my lifetime, and I want to first of all thank everyone for such a lean budget. And for the effort that goes into that. And also in terms of presentation, Sharon, you should teach everyone else how to present a budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that comment. Is there anybody else?
Beth? Go ahead, Beth.
Beth, you already spoke once tonight on this topic. So if you have supplemental information or want to introduce somebody else, you did kind of burn your 3 minutes a little earlier.
No, that's wonderful. I am all done. Thank you very much.
All right. But I don't want to cut you off. I mean, if there's nobody else, I'll allow you a couple of additional minutes if you'd like, but.
Teresa Holman.
Hi, thank you so much, Sharon, for letting me listen in on this budget. I just had a question. I heard that you allocated money in the budget for scenic, and thank you for that. I was wondering if the medians on San Carlos were going to be fixed into the general fund budget.
Okay, so Teresa will be taking these questions under submission. Once we're done with public testimony, then staff will answer those questions as they came in. So if you have anything else you'd like to ask, that would be a good time. Great.
No, thank you.
All right, we'll take that under submission.
All right, Katie Castagna?
Good evening, everybody, Mayor and Council members. I'm Katie Castagna with United Way, Monterey County, and I want to thank you as well for the opportunity to hear about your budget planning and prep and see some optimism for the year ahead. I just wanted to speak to an item that United Way has submitted to City Hall, a request for continued funding for our 211 information and referral service. As I often do, I'm offering up, and I hope we can come back and give a formal presentation to the council about 211 and some of our special initiatives. But I want everyone to know that this free information and referral helpline is available to the community 24/7 and has been especially instrumental during the pandemic. We're able to offer this infrastructure and resource because of continued funding support from a broad base of public and private entities. And I hope that the City of Carmel will continue to support us financially in the next year. And I want to thank you again for your past support. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else?
Now is the time if anybody else would like to address the council on the items on the budget. *6.
Hi.
Go ahead, state your name.
Yes, my name is Moira LaMountain with the Monterey County Film Commission. I wanted to speak to the council and see if it might be possible for the film office to get some funding through the marketing budget. We had gone through the discretionary grant application process last month and were denied any funding. We work really hard to promote all areas of Monterey County, also in the city of Carmel. We have been working with you for a number of years. When we started the new discretionary grant program in 2016-17, the city had 4 permits. The city made a contribution of $500 to our marketing budget. The following year, we had doubled that to, well, almost doubled it to 6 permits in 2017-18 and were granted $1,000. The following cycle, the permits jumped to 15 permits with another $1,000 investment. The last fiscal year we were funded through the city of Carmel-by-the-Sea was in 2019-20. We received $1,750. Unfortunately, that was the cycle that COVID hit, and we had only reached 7 permits when everything shut down. Our expectation had been somewhere between 10 and 11 permits. I do think that 2018-19 was a bit of an anomaly. There were a number of locations that were used for some large productions. The film business is going to start rolling back. Advertising in this market space is very targeted. It is specialized to the makers of film and multimedia. It's an international market that we market to. We have placed things in Real Directory, which is the Northern California Bible. There is the International Locations Guide. There is a California Locations Guide. Each one of these placements is in the thousands of dollars. And with support from different municipalities, we're able to expand what we can do and buy a little bit more real estate so that we can showcase the various areas. And we would really appreciate your support this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else?
If you'd like to raise your hand at the bottom of your screen, there is a reactions tab. If you click on that, you can raise your hand. If you're attending via phone, *9 will raise your hand. *6 will unmute you. Mayor, it doesn't appear that there's anyone else.
All righty. That noted, then I'll close the public comment period, bring it back to council for additional questions or directions. We were going to start the discussion, though, with the possible setting a limit or a cap or a ceiling on the amount of reserves that we thought was appropriate. Bobby, did you want to speak to that? It was your suggestion. Or Chip?
Mr. Mayor, if I can just quickly answer the question, sir, that were posed. Thanks to Ms. Long. Again, we'll get you those answers, Ms. Long. Ms. Holman asked about the island medians on San Carlos. Those are part of the budget. There's a lot more outreach and education work that needs to happen before they're constructed. But yes, those are part of our capital budget.
Right.
Thank you.
And then Ms. Castagna is actually you're coming in June to present to the council. But again, the 211 funding is in the council budget for this fiscal year as well. So I think that those are the answers to the questions that we received, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I apologize for that. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All righty. So now we'll go to the council. Bobby, did you want to speak to your concerns regarding setting a possible, agreed upon amount for strategic reserves?
Well, yeah, thank you, Mayor. I thought this would be a really a nice way to bring in the process of spending. It's first, let's set our agreed upon number as far as what we think the city of Carmel should have in its reserves, knowing that we're not fully out of this pandemic yet, knowing that it could be an extremely difficult year with drought and some of the things that might be coming down the pike. And so I thought, well, if we can at least get a base of what we agree on in the savings account, then we can kind of arm wrestle for the other things that we're going to take care of during this year on the capital project side.
All right, I don't object. Is there any council objection to that? So do you want to make a proposal? Well, I'll tell you what I'm used to. I'm used to 20%, honestly. I think that's a common denominator. 20% of 25 million is not a lot of money, to be honest with you. When you look at the magnitude of a disaster that this community could have, whether it's an earthquake, whether it's a fire, whether it's some sort of windstorm, it could be anything, power, could be anything. And I think that is at least a responsible amount of money. Chip, isn't that a bit of a norm in other communities?
Yeah, so Sharon reported out, we've been talking about this for a couple months, and she reported out that, closer to 20% is the norm. That'd be $5 million for us. If that's the council direction, what I would suggest that we do is we do pull from some of the funds that have higher fund balance. We would have to modify our policy in a formal sense, and I don't know, Sharon, if we have maybe we've got the capacity to add a resolution on the June 8th adoption hearing to raise that to 20% again, based on your preliminary direction tonight, and then we can strive to see what we can pull together for the fiscal year going ahead, Mr. Mayor.
And quite frankly, 2.5, that's about the price of medium house in Carmel. Being facetious, but honestly, Carrie, what do you think?
If we could go back to the table, nice tables, Sharon, with the fund balances on it. So let's do some visualization here for 20%. So go back to that nice table where you had the different fund balances broken out, if you would, please. Thank you.
There it is.
Okay, so, what happened? There we go.
There it is.
Okay, so Chip or Sharon, if we go to the 5 million with this table, how would we get there? So help the public and the council understand how we would get to the 5 million.
Yeah, if I may, Sharon. So if you look at 101 general fund reserve, 2.1 estimating ending balance next month, and 2.3 at the end of next fiscal year. If you went to 20%, again, we need to find about another $2.5 million or so. So what you could do is, again, you could pull from that hostelry. Again, the hostelry reserve is, again, the requirement is for next fiscal year is 5.33 million. I'm sorry, 533,000, and outside that, you've got a balance of about $2 million. We could take some money from there, and then also, as Mr. Barron pointed out, the local sales tax measure, which is Fund 206. Has a projected ending year balance at the end of next fiscal year of 1.3, same as this year. I'm sorry for that oversight on my part. 1.3 and 1.3. So again, you could take some money from there as well. So what I don't want to do is I don't want to sacrifice our operating capital to set an unrealistic bar for the reserve in our first year out. So if 20% is your goal, let us see how we can pull that together to ensure that we still have enough working capital to again pay the bills. I hate to bring this up because it's a sore topic with all of us, is that we did not have a cash flow last August to pay our pension liability. And so we sacrificed about $60,000 in interest. And we're not going to, we've already created policies. I mean, last year was an anomaly, let's face it. But what we're trying to do is make sure that we have enough fund balance outside reserves. Again, the reserves are like your retirement account. Your fund balance is like your savings account. And then we've got our, the fund balance is also incorporated into operating capital. What was the phrase you used with me yesterday morning, Councilmember Tice?
Quick money.
Quick money.
Easy
So-
accessible.
Easily, yeah, quick money would again be the fund balance. So again, if that was your goal of 20%, which would be 5 million in general fund reserve, we would look at how we can get there, or whether we can get there this fiscal year, or whether we can go to 15%, which would be 3.75 million for this fiscal year, and then whether we make up the additional 5% in 2022.
So thank you. That's helpful. I think the ultimate goal of 20% I agree with. I'm not sure I'm ready to go for that for this next fiscal year because of what I consider we're in recovery mode. So something like 15% and then ramp up. I like this idea of ramping up to 20 is something that I would be more inclined to take a look at.
I don't have a problem with that necessarily. I just want to make sure we're being forward thinking as far as potential disasters go. That's what it really is. It's a rainy day fund for a really bad rainy day. Jeff?
Yeah, question, I guess for the council and especially for Chip, would this 15 or 20% include the hostelry reserve as well? Like I'm a little bit unclear as to.
No, sir. No, I mean, well, you could have. I mean, right now you have a combined, but they're kind of apples and oranges, right? So you've got you have 10% of the general fund for the general fund reserve, and you have 10% of our estimated hospitality, our TOT, for the hostel reserve. So they're not really comparable. So in the way the conversation's been going thus far, the way I've interpreted what you're saying is that you would like, and I don't necessarily disagree, 20% of the general fund as a general fund reserve, separate from the 10% in the hostel reserve.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct? This is, we're trying to discuss this new.
Yeah, I guess, so to Carrie, I guess my question then is, the hostel refund has, $2.27 million in it, and $2.5 million in it. Sorry, I'm reading off the chart. And there's $2 million that's not in the reserve. Why would we not transfer that money to the general fund reserve? I know we have a tourism dependent economy, but I'm trying to.
Yeah, I mean, you could, sir. That's why, I don't want to do too much math in public, so we want to put our heads together. If it's your direction, we'll find out how to get you there. As a reminder, we had to use the hostelry reserve to balance last year's budget. Was it 1.7, Sharon? Was that the number that sticks in my mind? So without having to delve in, again, we had exhausted our quick money, our fund balance in the general fund, and we had to tap into our TOT fund balance, not our reserve. We didn't have to tap into any reserves last year, but it was there for us to use because it was that quick money.
So this is under direction. So if it's our consensus that we would like to get to 18% or 15 and work to 20 the next year, then that's fine with me. But I just like to make sure that we kind of set the parameters for what we're going to do as one-time money, or a direction that's more oriented towards the betterment of the city as a whole and special projects, is my thought. So,
Mayor, so
Bobby, let me just go to Karen. She just had her hand up. Okay, thanks. Karen?
I have a question about doing this right now. I can see doing it for the future, but we are over a year behind in some of our capital projects. And not only are we officially a year behind because we took that time out, we are years behind in deferred maintenance in some of our buildings and our green infrastructure, et cetera. So right now at this hour, I don't particularly feel good about hamstringing the opportunity to perhaps finesse a few things that are in the capital improvement or could be in the capital improvement, because things deferred never get better. They usually get worse and more expensive. And I'll bring up a couple. I see the direction. I want to see it for the future. I don't know whether we can put it into this budget. That's my concern. And then I'll make comments on what I think. I have ideas in the capital improvement project in a minute, if you want to do process now.
Well, I'd like to get through the process issue. For me, it's as if I didn't if I wanted to, if I hadn't done any maintenance on my house in a year, and all of a sudden I came into $200,000, was I going to go ahead and spend the entire $200,000, or was I going to save some money in anticipation that there might be another storm pending that would cause me to have money in reserve to go ahead and make those repairs? So I'm not opposed to spending some of the money that we've got, but I don't want to go and spend it all and find out that we were not good with our foresight and went ahead and not wasted, but we invested too quickly, thinking that the rosy days were ahead. Council members? Bobby, I'm sorry.
My screen went dead for a moment. Am I back on?
Yeah, you're live. No, you've muted yourself, Bobby. You're still moving and everything. You're alive, but you're just not speaking.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, now we can.
I'm completely dead.
No, you're not. You're very alive. We can hear you. We can see you. You're moving.
I can call him, Mayor.
I don't know why. It's I'm live?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. So I guess this is where I would chime in and say no. I would say absolutely now is the time to set aside our savings, since we don't know what's going to happen in the next year. It's a scary time right now. So I would be all for trying to budget for 20%. If there's not a consensus on that, I can understand, but at least let's try for, at least let's try for 10% in hotelery.
Well, the other thing is we always have mid-year budget review, Chip. We could go ahead and make an allocation and augment it mid-year, couldn't we?
Yes, sir. Yeah, absolutely. And again, we'd be committed to keeping you really close through this recovery and coming back before mid-years, quite frankly. Councilman Richards, can you hear us, sir? Mayor, we seem to have lost him.
Yeah, I know.
I can see the council member, but he doesn't seem to be able to hear us.
Want to take a brief break while you try to reconnect him?
Yeah, maybe he went out. Maybe he's going to reconnect now. Let's.
Am I on now?
Yep. Yeah.
Yes.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, now I can hear you. Sorry about that.
All right. So what Chip was saying, Bobby, was that we've been watching a budget very, 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 very responsibly. I think we've been very, very diligent about staying on top of the budget, more so than just going ahead, approving and then saying, all right, we'll come back and check it in the next year. We've been getting quarterly updates. I think that's a very, very good way to go. I'd say if we got a quarterly update and things were looking good, then we could go ahead and augment some additional monies. The budget is not a cast in stone document. It's actually a living, breathing document. And it can be subject to change based on any nuances that come along in the financial world.
If I may, Mayor, I think that's why our posture has been to keep a little bit. Well, Councilmember Tice said, quick money. We just do not know what's going to happen, but we do know that we're going to have ongoing expenses. So you could look at our fund balances and say, Chip, you have a lot of money that's not being it's not in production. But again, the general fund is money that's being transferred in. from hospitality, from the sales tax, and and it flows in from our property tax twice a year. And it's spent on it's spent more regularly than the revenue is. So again, the expenditures are monthly. The revenue is, I wouldn't call it episodic, but I mean, sometimes the sales tax from the state comes in a little early. Sometimes it comes in a little bit late. It's just, it's unpredictable. So that's why, again, I think we carry a little bit more fund balance than, well, that's why I think we receive questions about why we carry as much as we do in fund balance.
Carrie.
When you look at this chart, this is a very conservative budget. At the end of the next fiscal year, June of 2022, we're expected, just in the general fund and the hostelry, we're expected to have almost $10,000. I mean, $10 million, excuse me. So, if we were looking at this and saying we were down to the $1 or $2 million range for these funds, this is why this budget is conservative. So I'm not feeling as nervous, because this table tells us what's going in, what's going out, and what we expect at the end of the year. So if we were down to 1 million in general fund and with only a fund reserve of 2.3, I'd be nervous. So I'm not feeling as nervous with these numbers. And one reason we have this conservative budget is the other chart that I appreciated, Sharon, is the FTE chart that you did, the history of how many full-time equivalents positions the city has engaged over the years. And, here's my fear. Not only do we have a lot of capital projects, but based on our strategic planning last week, we have a lot of projects that don't take funds that we want the staff to do. We want them to do Flanders. We want them to maybe kick off a parking garage. We want them to do parking. So a lot of these projects don't necessarily take funds, but they take staff time. And so I'm really concerned about capacity here. And what I heard last week at our strategic planning meeting with the managers was that they're tapped out and we're not going to be able to get all this stuff done with our current staffing. So so if we want all this done, just a couple of years ago in fiscal year 1920, we had 92 positions. This next fiscal year, we're hoping to get back to 80.7. We're still short, folks. We are still short a bunch of people to get things done. And that's what has me concerned. Now, I'm not saying we should fund them all, but I think some strategic decisions about how we're going to add staff, because we already have the positions, how we're going to add staff. And, my question to Chip is half a position adding enough? And I do appreciate the fact that we will come back in September and take a look at this budget. We'll know what this fiscal year has ended. So, those are my thoughts right now. This is a conservative budget, and I understand the issue of putting money aside, and but we're not looking at something. We're not down to the nubbins here, based on this table.
So under direction, then perhaps if we could recognize that there's two good things to make government work: One is communication, the other is compromise. How about 15% is direction to staff, and we see what that looks like? Can we go there?
I'm fine with that.
Yeah. Bobby, were you trying to say something? Sorry.
Yeah, no, I appreciate us trying to create a conservative budget, but the question really is, our savings isn't conservative. Our savings is at the bare minimum. So that's not conservative. I appreciate that we're trying to be conservative with our spending. Yeah, for me, Mayor, it's really just important that I know how much that we have in savings, so then I know how much we can spend. But what I can't do, or I don't want to do, is spend money and then say, okay, we have enough left over for some savings. So yeah, I'm fine. If you wanted to make a motion to do 15% now and 20% next year, I would be willing to accept that.
Were we good doing this just by consensus, Chip?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Can I say just a couple quick things?
Absolutely.
I really appreciate this conversation. You know, it's because of this kind of a conversation, Council, that we have budgeted for the next 5 fiscal years $1 million to deal with our UAL, our pension UAL. So great work. Two words of caution. Again, our regular pension payments go up substantially. I think they went up by $230,000 between this fiscal year and next fiscal year. So that's an upward moving target. We also have, you know, our lease obligation bond for Sunset Center. We took 2 years of interest, and then again that balloons next year to $500,000 for the next, I think it's seven years after that, or 8 years after that. So again, you know, I appreciate exactly where you're going. We'll come back with an answer for getting us to the 15%. We'll come back and we'll actually broadcast that before the 8th to you, so you can think about it. And with the ear toward, again, ensuring that we have enough quick money or fund balance so we can take care of our day-to-day obligations. We will come back in September. Those will be unaudited results for this fiscal year. But again, hopefully we'll close out the year. We'll have a good sense of where we are. We bring the audited results from the previous fiscal year at mid-year budget. But again, we'll come back and do that in January of 2022. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So Council, can we give a head to north-south on 15% to look at? Bring it back, see what it looks like? Yeah. All right, great. Thank you. All right, so now let's move on then to projects or areas of concern that you wanted to augment. Which we would like to go first? Karen, did you want to go?
Sure, I would.
Okay.
I don't think that they're outrageous or anything. I think they're things that we ought to think about. And I'll repeat what I said before. I take it very seriously that we do have to be fiscally conservative, but we also need to address some long deferred maintenance that will cost us more in the long run if we don't take care of it now. And a sustainable solution fixes on an ongoing budget problem now and into the future. Deferrals put off problems by fixing a one-time problem, but they create more or added cost in future years. So that's what's guiding me on this. It was brought to my attention this week that there is some dry rot on the balcony of the main library. And this may be serious dry rot. And I would hope that Bob Harari and Chip and whoever knows about this could really give that a look between now and next month and tell us if this is a safety issue. It appears that it could be. There are posts that are not attached anymore at the bottom. And while we want to have a library master plan, which I totally support, we want to keep the library upright as well. So we want to keep it standing. So I would really think that we need to look at that and see if that needs to be added into the budget somehow. I'd also like to put a little plea in for why don't we do all the windows at Sunset Center and all the windows at the library at one time instead of piecemealing it out, so that we can avoid having to have different RFPs or bidding processes or whatever over a number of years. These have been deferred for a long, long time, and we have a little bit of extra money now. It would be great to get those fixed and done. The last thing I want to talk about are the sidewalk repair and paving projects. And Bob has been really great at educating me as to what AC is and PCC and all these different things. It's actually been kind of fun learning about this. Coming in on San Carlos, that's one of the entry points to our city. And to just put that in as concrete would seem to be penny wise and pound foolish. I know it will cost more to do it properly, but that is an entryway to our city, and that is where a lot of tourists walk up and down from the hotels. I would like to know the cost of pavers versus that being repaired with concrete. Dolores and 6th, there is by Subvecino Court, excuse me. I'd also like to know how much more it would cost to do that with pavers versus the PCC. And then on Mission, I was happy to hear that the pavers or the bricks, I think it's bricks there on that section, are going to be replaced with bricks. The reason I think it's important to use pavers is twofold. I said aesthetics, but also it's easier to repair things when you use pavers as far as tree roots and so on. And it's probably the more sustainable thing to do because concrete, I believe it is, or cement has a lot of greenhouse gas emissions and is not as permeable. So those are the things that I would like to see come back to us with some, a little maybe, so we can make some choices on those figures. And then the last thing, my comment would be that I don't see a landscape contract, so I'm assuming we're going to continue to do the landscaping that we let go in-house. And I'm wondering if that is the wisest thing to do, because it does really add that much more to our existing staff. And right now, a lot of people are not very happy with the result that is downtown. And would a landscape contract be something we might want to add into our budget again, because we did cut that out. I'm hoping that the mail delivery system is coming back to us and that we might recoup some money there with a new policy on that. But I'm very, very concerned with the dry rot at the library and getting the projects done, because windows, to replace windows versus painting windows could be really an expensive deferral. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Next. Bobby, did you have your hand up? Okay. Carrie, did you want to suggest any augmentations you're interested in, or additional direction to staff about projects that you would like to see that are not included?
Not at this time.
All right, because this was the opportunity. Jeff?
Thank you, Dave. I'm generally okay with the list of the projects that are on the list, but I would like to shout out for Sharon for the excellent presentation. So thank you very much, Sharon and Chip. It's almost understandable now, all that fund balance stuff. So I'm hoping next year I'll finally get it.
Jeff, you've always more than got it. You know that. You're a mathematician on the council.
Thank you. Also, thank you, Chip, for the extra. I agree with, Chip's remarks about the extra half a head count in planning to deal with and manage all the projects that we have seemingly queued up. I know in my conversation with Chip yesterday, we talked about the prioritization of all the projects that we have sort of shortlisted or long listed last week, and I'm looking forward to that and figuring out whether the half of a head count is enough to get through all of our projects. And I think Chip told me that we would see the sort of objective part of that exercise in July or August or sometime around there. So hopefully that's soon enough in the year to make it. I know that Chip is under a lot of pressure with money and the head count, and I know that this is a little bit of a guessing game, trying to match the projects with the head count and all that. And so I'm appreciative of his willing to make himself a little bit uncomfortable and sort of step a little bit closer to the edge of the window. And I just wanted to tell you that we will catch you. We'll try to catch you if you fall. One of the questions, and Dave, we were talking about expenditure changes. Do you want the pension mitigation? I think Sharon wanted to know where the $1 million, having just said I found this whole fund balance thing really confusing. I do think we should take the $1 million out and put it somewhere else. I'm still, I think I've said this before, that the interaction between the OPEB account and this sort of pension mitigation money is there. So I would be fine if you wanted to just put it in the OPEB account, and if we wanted to modify the changes to that. I know that it doesn't satisfy, the council's general consensus of being able to put it in a Section 115 trust or paying it off to CalPERS. I do think that there's a little bit of work to do in trying to understand how that OPEB account really works. And, I have it on my short list of goals to try and do that by the time that we get to next budget season, so that we can start to see some money going into and out of the OPEB account as we pay these health insurance premiums for our retirees and whatever else that pays for. I noticed in the agenda packet, Sharon, you pointed out that the real amount of our OPEB is $4 million, and yet, which is a little bit of a mystery to me. You pointed that out from the last audit statement, and perhaps to Bobby's notion about savings, perhaps that's something, we talk about funding CalPERS a lot, and perhaps that's something we should also try to slowly get up to 100% of that actuarial number, whatever that is, and stop funding it out of our revenues. But thank you for the budget and for everything. So those are my comments right now.
And Jeff, if I just might, to the ULI and everything, I think that we're all headed in the right direction. I think we all want to get there. And I appreciate that unanimity on that topic. Whether we're going in and putting the money in exactly the right place, I have the same concerns. I think a little more detail, a little bit more definition, a little more public discussion would make me feel better about where we should be making that investment. But the fact that this council is committed to aggressively addressing our unfunded liabilities, I think is a very, very responsible way for us to go. And I appreciate that. So thank you for bringing that up. Bobby, did you have anything?
No, not at this point, Mayor. I would like to see the 115, I would like to see that funded with the $1 million that we had talked about earlier. I don't want to make any switches to that at this point.
No, I'm not, my jury's still out. I don't really know who to convict in this crime. So, Carrie, do you have anything?
No, I appreciate the budget that's been presented to us, and I think it's been really hard to really considering the COVID situation and trying to figure out how we're going to springboard out of this. The one thing nice about Carmel, we are dependent on the leisure visitor, where our neighbors, they depend more on group business, and that does not come back as quickly as the leisure market. I can tell you that things are certainly looking up for June from a hotel standpoint. So it seems that there is a pent up a desire to get out and come to Carmel. So I think that really works in our favor. And that's why our TOT numbers are stronger than expected. The group business it's going to be, that's going to take a little longer to come back. And we don't have a lot of that. We get some side business from it. Some of us get a little bit of group business, but it really is the leisure business. I appreciate the projects that the capital projects here. I'm with Karen. If we can do a little fudging on seeing what a nice sidewalk looks like on San Carlos. I did my sidewalk and pavers. Actually, I paid for that, not the city. So that's another option, is for people to step up on some of these sidewalks. But it's a tough time to do that. I understand that. I agree with the mayor. We're putting aside $1 million of our budget for unfunded liability in the pension, and now we're talking about reserves. So I think this council is really trying to work hard at looking to the future and looking at our liabilities and having that cushion so that if there is another COVID situation that puts us in dire needs, that the city will be ready for it. So I do appreciate that.
Carrie, thank you for those comments. And you couldn't be more right. I do live with the Queen of Conference visitation, and she's got 3 groups this month. That's it. The TED conference is coming back, oddly enough, in July, but still, that's just a slight trickling of what they're expecting. We're not Cannery Row, we're not the aquarium, we're not, Fisherman's Wharf. We're the gateway to Big Sur, we're Carmel Beach. We're known for our walking experiences and our outdoor recreation and smaller boutique-y kind of places that don't make you feel so crowded and so close. I think you're absolutely right, Carrie. It's going to take a while for a convention and large-scale visitation to return, but we're lucky to have had what we've got here. I want to again thank you guys for working so hard on this. Thank you, Chip. Thank you, Sharon, all of you, all the department heads for crunching the numbers as you did. We were lucky to get through this. My concerns is I do have an issue with the Ocean and Scenic intersection. I think, Bob, you are well aware of that, though, and that was addressed, I believe, in your plan. That is really one bumpy ride because you come across there.
Mr. Mayor, that would be in the year after.
I know, but it's got some interim fixes. Something's got to happen because what you did a couple of years ago is falling apart again. Yeah, and then as one of the things I've been noticing is that a lot of the tree removal that's been going on in town, it's good. I mean, to get rid of the dead trees, but there's all this ivy that's growing up these trees that are killing a lot of the pines. And I saw one coming in. A couple of them are in the county, unfortunately, but there's a couple here in town that have ivy on them. If we do something to remove or mitigate perhaps the death of these trees by eliminating some of that growth that's choking them out, that would be good. And then the other thing, Chip, I mentioned it earlier, I do think you're going to need another code enforcement officer, whether it's another half-time or whether it's a full-time. But, we had our building inspector out enforcing code infractions. I think there's a proliferation of bad signage in the downtown area. There's, some people don't seem to know what 6 feet means. We're going to have to get on that too. And I don't want to delay that either. So whatever you can do to augment that, I'd appreciate it. That is pretty much it. Karen, did you want to say something?
Yes, the last pitch I would like to make is that I really do think it would benefit our economic recovery and our downtown business district to put some funds into some beautification down there. I think it would really help. People expect Carmel to be beautiful when they arrive and clean and walkable. And if we can do that, we will always have our good visitors come back. But if we disappoint them, they're going to think we're sliding down the hill. So beautification, Karen. I saw the Carmel Residents Association had articles about beautification being needed. So that's my last pitch. And I would really like to thank Sharon and Chip for the presentation. Being new to budgets and everything, it's quite daunting, but they made it a lot more understandable. And thank you again too for the policy that I asked you to print up at the last hour today, the financial and budget policies. I think it's good for all of us to have that to review. So thank you once again. And thank you, Dave, for running a very nice meeting.
Well, Karen, I appreciate your coming up to speed so quickly and your level of effort to learn. You said it's like drinking from a fire hose, but you're doing a great job. One of the things to your beautification issue, you know, one of my favorite governmental watchdogs, the great Richard Kreitman, has been saying we should have some sort of beautification contest challenging the storefronts with a quarterly award for best improvement or best front street, best landscaping, best storefront, best paint, something like that. Maybe we should reactivate his enthusiasm, draft him to go out and take care of that. Because it is, I mean, there's a value to being, you know, there should be pride of ownership in the storefronts. And some of them do and some of them don't. But I think if somebody got a little recognition publicly, honor him at a council meeting, that'd be great. So if there's any objection to that, I will go out and find Mr. Kreitman. I think he'll probably find me in the next 24 hours. Having heard his name, but it'd be a good idea. So, Chip, do you have anything else in summation?
No, just great direction, Council. I took some really good notes. I would like to. I'll get with everyone, hopefully tomorrow or Thursday, and we'll put some costs associated with some of these things, and we'll bring them back. So, thank you for really a vigorous and very civil discussion. Great direction. Thank you, Council. Sharon, anything? You good? Okay. Thank you, Council.
Is there anything else for the good of the order at this special meeting? All right, guys, we stand adjourned. Thanks again. I much appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take care.